We had some primaries yesterday, and the results are in. So first we go to Kentucky here. In Kentucky, Hillary Clinton had 46.8% of the vote, which is 212,500 votes or so. And Bernie Sanders had 46.3% of the vote, 210,600 votes or so. And Hillary Clinton ended up barely edging out a victory there in Kentucky. Now, with 95% of the vote in, Bernie Sanders actually had a 1,000-vote lead, and then it flipped in that last 5%, and Hillary Clinton ended up barely nudging it out. Now, this is still kind of interesting because Hillary Clinton won Kentucky in 2008 by, I think it was 35 points. So this idea that she's such a super strong candidate in the general, and I don't know why anybody would ever say the opposite, that notion continues to get absolutely hammered. All right, then we move along to Oregon here. In Oregon, at least to this point, I'm not sure the exact percentage of the vote that's counted yet. It should be somewhere in the 90 percentile range or so, like 95, 99% or so. We have Bernie Sanders with 54.8% of the vote, Hillary with 47% of the vote. And Bernie, of course, ended up winning there. Now, again, this is really interesting because Oregon was a semi-closed primary. So I believe the way it works there is there's automatic registration when you go to the DMV, for example, but they register people as unaffiliated, and unaffiliated people can't vote in the primary. You'd have to, write back and say, I want to be a Democrat or I want to be a Republican. So those people were excluded, but everybody else, and everybody else in the Democratic Party and the Republican Party could vote in the primary, and Bernie Sanders ended up winning. So yet again, this chips away at that image of Hillary Clinton as well. She always wins when it's a closed primary. Well, number one, I don't know if you'd really want to brag about that because when the process is more open, Bernie does better. But even in this case, he took away her perceived advantage in Oregon, and he ended up winning there. So Bernie's staying in, obviously, and he had a giant rally in California yesterday. And during that rally, some of his supporters were chanting Bernie or bust. In fact, many people in the crowd started chanting Bernie or bust. Now, what's hilarious is watching the response of media figures. I know Chris Hayes was shocked, and he was tweeting about it. And Chris Hayes isn't a bad guy, by the way. In fact, he's probably one of the better guys on TV. But on this one, he's like, my goodness, I can't believe this is happening. And, others, I was reading the response to Chris Hayes on his Twitter feed, and it was probably 70 to 80% Hillary supporters just super angry at Bernie and saying, but Trump, party unity, something. And they were mad, and they were, personally attacking Bernie supporters for staking that position. And I realized something last night, and I couldn't express this strongly enough. I tried to on Twitter, but I couldn't express it strongly enough. I think that if you blame Bernie supporters who are Bernie or bust instead of blaming Hillary for being a weak candidate, you miss the point of democracy. Now, I've described it before. Still to this day, I wouldn't call myself full Bernie or bust. I described my position when I was on TYT the night of the Democratic primary in New York, and I said I have 1 foot in that camp, 1 foot out of that camp. I think if you're in a deep red state or a deep blue state, I don't care if you vote for Hillary. I'm in a deep blue state, so I'm going to probably vote for Jill Stein, or I'm going to write in Bernie Sanders' name. But I said if I was in a swing state, I would end up voting for Hillary if it's between Hillary and Trump. But with that being my position, I don't have this scorn and anger at the Bernie or bust people. In fact, I think they're the most accurate and care the most about the political process in the U.S. and care the most about doing the right thing and overthrowing this pathetic establishment, which is rotten through and through. So these are people who are principled voters. They care about all the issues and the policy substance. And they look at Hillary Clinton and they say, I'm sorry, I just can't do it. I just can't hold my nose and vote for her. Bernie Sanders is leagues better in almost every imaginable way. And then the Hillary supporters, and I have always noticed this now, they never, ever, ever go, hey, let me explain to you using policy detail why it is that it's a silly move to do Bernie or bust and not, if it comes down to it, hold your nose and vote for Hillary. I've never seen a logical, concise explanation. I just see anger and rage. Party unity! Get in line and vote for her. No, shouldn't you direct your anger at Hillary? And shouldn't you say, you got to give them a reason to come and vote for you? Because it ain't their fault, man. They're looking at the issues and they're going, I can't do it. So, is it possible Hillary would get more progressive-based voters if, for example, she picked a very, very progressive VP? Yes, I think that would help. Would it help, for example, if Bernie Sanders said, hey, Hillary, look, you're going to get my endorsement or you're going to get my support if, and then he lays out 3 very specific policy things and says, you need to sign a pledge in order to fight for these specific things. Would that get some progressives to go to her in the general if need be? Yeah, but it's defiance from the Hillary campaign to the point where her campaign is literally reaching out to Wall Street Bush donors and saying to them, she represents your values better than Donald Trump represents your values. So it's snubbing the base immediately, running further to the right and trying to get Bush donors on your side. Well, then how the fuck can anybody be mad at the Bernie or bust people when they're saying, you are not even trying to represent us and care about the policy substance and do actual liberal and progressive shit? So when I look at what Bernie's doing here, I love it. Now, we've discussed it before. He has, I think it's 290 or so pledged delegate deficit here. So he would need to win like 67% of the pledged delegates moving forward in order to edge out Hillary there, and that's almost certainly not going to happen. So what he's doing is he's trying to stay in the race and stay within striking distance to the point where he can get to the convention and he could have sway over policy for the Democratic platform and he could have his voice heard, which obviously represents the American people. And he could perhaps try to make an argument at the time to flip superdelegates to say, hey, look, I won so many more of the later contests. She has high unfavorables. I don't. She is tied with Trump in almost every poll at this point on a national level. I'm beating him on average by 13 points. And oh yeah, by the way, she might be in a jail cell because she's being investigated by the FBI and they could do an indictment any second now. So why would you pick the weaker candidate? You should pick me. So he's going to stay in and he's going to make that argument, and I think he should do that. And all of the, fear in the Hillary campaign and how they sense they're inadequate and they're insecure over that, I like that. I like that because they should feel like that because somehow they're leading the Democratic primary and they managed to be the least liberal and the least progressive Democrat in this position almost arguably in the country. The only Democrats I could think of that are more conservative than she is are probably the Blue Dogs, and you could count them on maybe 1 or 2 hands at most. So you talk about people like Evan Bayh, and there are some other corporatist Democrats who are perhaps a little worse than her, but she's certainly not part of the progressive wing of the party or the liberal wing, and I would argue she's not even really like a moderate Democrat. She's more like a right-wing Democrat, this so-called new Democrat. And we're sick of it, man. It's not the 1990s anymore. The heart of the base is with Bernie Sanders. And when people say, yeah, but his supporters are like a left-wing Tea Party, that's their problem, I say, number one, you're damn right we're like a left-wing Tea Party. And number two, that means we're right. We're tired of compromising our values to corporatist Democrats who, want to hold hands and sing Kumbaya with people on Wall Street and do favors for them while they screw over their constituents. We're tired of, falling in line behind Democrats who are willing to be super hawkish and Republican light on foreign policy. We're just tired of doing it. So the difference between a left-wing Tea Party and a right-wing Tea Party is that the right-wing Tea Party is filled with absolute morons, and the left-wing Tea Party is filled with policy wonks who really give a shit about the future of the country and the planet, and they're tired of voting for 2 different wings of the same party, namely the business party, the corporate party. So, yeah, that's what we are, and we're damn right, and if you're not on our side, well, you're part of the problem too.